Welcome to the Nation of History channel. Be sure to subscribe and like so you don't miss out on more videos like this one. The photograph, titled "The Blind Girl," was taken by Chrysler Strömholm in Hiroshima, Japan in 1963. The image became a silent symbol of pain, human resilience, and the lasting scars of nuclear conflict. The view of destruction in Dresden's Old Town, seen from the City Hall Tower on February 15, 1945, reveals the devastating impact of Allied bombing during World War II. King George V took part in a famous hunting expedition in the Terai region of southern Nepal in 1911. During the hunt, several wild animals were killed, including tigers and rhinoceroses. Lyndon B. Johnson is sworn in as President of the United States aboard Air Force One on November 22, 1963. Standing beside him is Jacqueline Kennedy, wife of President John F. Kennedy, who had been assassinated 2 hours earlier in Dallas, Texas. Fidel Castro, during a meeting with Nikita Khrushchev in 1963, is shown smoking a cigar and wearing 2 Rolex watches, a detail that stood out due to the contrast between his communist image and the luxurious accessories. Julius and Ethel Rosenberg kiss after being formally charged with espionage in the United States in the early 1950s. The couple was held responsible for passing confidential information about the American nuclear program to the Soviet Union. The headquarters of Mussolini's Italian Fascist Party in 1934, located in Rome, served as a central hub for the administration and ideology of the fascist regime. Under Benito Mussolini's leadership, the party aimed to consolidate power and promote Italy's nationalist and authoritarian agenda. Charlie Chaplin and Mahatma Gandhi meet in London in 1931 during Gandhi's visit to the United Kingdom to attend the Round Table Conference on India's independence. Manfred von Richthofen, popularly known as the Red Baron, is pictured in 1917 at the height of his fame as a fighter pilot during World War I. The Red Baron was feared by enemies and admired by fellow pilots until his death in combat in 1918. Japanese lieutenant and war correspondent Dr. Sonji Sakamoto meets with Hungarian General György Rakovsky on the Eastern Front during World War II in 1942. U.S. Navy divers prepare to load the Apollo 15 Command Module C-M onto the USS Okinawa after its recovery from the ocean on August 7, 1972. Vietnam veterans protest the war in 1970 with a sign reading, "We won't fight another rich man's war." The protest reflected the growing frustration among veterans, many of whom had been sent to fight in a controversial conflict. A deaf man hugs a speaker to his chest in the 1970s to feel the music's vibrations. During that decade, deaf individuals began exploring new ways to connect with music through the physical sensation of sound waves across the body. Prisoners are seen wearing wooden kangs in 1902, a traditional form of public punishment in parts of Asia, especially Imperial China. The kangs were heavy wooden frames locked around the neck, restricting movement and serving as humiliation. A kneeling elephant receives passengers while a handler of Indian origin firmly guides it. The image was taken during the British Raj period, likely in the late 19th or early 20th century. Native Americans perform a traditional ceremony and present a symbolic gift to a trained engineer in the state of Oregon in 1940. The gesture represents a moment of respect and cultural exchange, often staged for receptions or special railway events. A survivor of the Buchenwald concentration camp points and identifies a Nazi guard in 1945, shortly after the camp was liberated by Allied forces. The image symbolizes the direct confrontation between victims and perpetrators, marking the beginning of historical accountability. The kinetograph camera, in use in 1912, represents one of the earliest filming technologies in cinematic history. It was originally developed in the 1890s by William Kennedy Laurie Dixon under the supervision of Thomas Edison. Finnish President Urho Kaleva Kekkonen and North Korean leader Kim Il-sung stand together during an official visit to the Finnish parliament in 1975. The meeting symbolizes Cold War diplomacy between Finland and North Korea. A woman churns milk to make butter while reading a book in 1897 in a peaceful rural life scene. A small kitten, likely her companion, adds to the simplicity of the everyday setting. The image shows a person restrained in one of the cruel forms of punishment used in various cultures throughout history. The use of physical and public punishments was common in many civilizations, where human suffering was often displayed as a warning to others. Soldiers and civilians pose in front of a Union Field Hospital in Michigan during the American Civil War in the 1860s. The U.S. flag in the background marks the presence of the Union Army at this temporary treatment site. A young girl appears in this image taken during the Great Depression in the United States in the 1930s. The photo symbolizes the resilience of children during one of the hardest periods in American history. A playful forced perspective photo is captured on a beach around 1943. This kind of photography was popular among soldiers and civilians during World War II, offering light-hearted moments during difficult times. A woman in uniform poses during World War II, representing the thousands who served in essential roles. Many worked as nurses, drivers, radio operators, mechanics, and in auxiliary military units such as the WAC, Women's Army Corps, in the United States, or the ATS in the United Kingdom. Harry S. Truman served as an artillery captain during World War I. He commanded Battery D of the 129th Field Artillery Regiment, part of the 35th Division of the United States Army. Clara Dare performs a daring jump from a bridge in Boston while handcuffed during a public escapism act. Inspired by artists like Harry Houdini, she was known for her risky stunts and spectacular escape performances. Wounded Indian soldiers are treated inside the Royal Pavilion in Brighton, Sussex in 1918. During World War I, the Royal Pavilion, originally built as a royal palace for the Prince Regent, was converted into a military hospital for injured soldiers. SPD Dauntless dive bombers are seen at the Douglas Aircraft Factory in El Segundo, California in 1943. During World War II, the SPD Dauntless was one of the most important aircraft used by the U.S. Navy. Workers take a lunch break on the St. John's Bridge in Portland, Oregon in 1931 during the final stage of construction. Workers take a lunch break on the St. John's Bridge in Portland, Oregon in 1931 during the final stage of construction. Marlene Dietrich is lifted by soldiers in New York in 1945 in a celebratory scene shortly after the end of World War II. The image symbolizes her popularity among the troops and her active role in the war effort. Workers are seen hanging from the iron framework while painting the Eiffel Tower in 1932. Built in 1889, the tower required constant maintenance and was repainted regularly every 7 years. The early days of aviation in the 1890s were marked by pioneering experiments with gliders and flying machines powered by propellers or flapping wings. Though still lacking reliable engines, the tests of the 1890s were essential to the development of modern aviation. The world's first deep-sea exploration vehicle, called the bathysphere, was developed in 1930 by engineers William Beebe and Otis Barton. The bathysphere marked the beginning of scientific exploration of the ocean's depths. Wilbur Wright's glider landed in Kittiwake, North Carolina in 1901 during one of his early flight experiments. This model was an evolution of the tests conducted in 1900 and was used to study aerodynamic control during flight. The kites built by Lawrence Hargrave in 1893 were essential to the early advancements in aviation. Although he never flew himself, his innovations paved the way for the development of the first manned airplanes. Passengers wait to board a plane in 1929 during the early years of commercial aviation. Air travel was gaining popularity as a fast way to move between cities and countries, marking the beginning of a new era in global mobility. A man poses in front of a Soyuz rocket during the 1980s, in the middle of the Soviet Union's space exploration era. The rocket, part of the Soviet space program launched in the 1960s, was used to transport cosmonauts and cargo to Earth orbit and the space station. British troops depart from Hong Kong to join United Nations forces in the Korean War in September 1950. After North Korean Communist forces invaded South Korea, the United Nations, led by the United States, intervened militarily in the conflict. A Japanese woman walks with a bucket balanced on her head, carrying her small children inside, in a scene captured in Japan in the early 1900s. This unusual method of child transport reflects the resourcefulness faced with the limitations of the time. Coney Island in New York appears vibrant in the 1950s, with its crowded beaches, busy amusement parks, and lively boardwalk. Known as one of the top leisure destinations in the United States, the area featured iconic attractions like the Cyclone roller coaster and the Wonder Wheel. Students in schools like this one in Brooklyn, New York, were taught to duck and take cover under their desks in 1962. This practice, known as duck and cover, was part of emergency drills in preparation for a potential nuclear attack during the Cold War. Young Elizabeth II, just 3 years old, is pictured alongside her father, King George VI, in 1929. The photo captures a tender and familiar moment between father and daughter before George VI became king in 1936 after the abdication of his brother, Edward VIII. Then, Princess Elizabeth and the Duke of Edinburgh visit Niagara Falls during an official trip to Canada in 1951. The visit marked the beginning of a long relationship between the monarch and Canada, one of the leading members of the Commonwealth. Muhammad Ali, still known as Cassius Clay at the time, appears on the podium after winning the gold medal in light heavyweight boxing at the 1960 Summer Olympics in Rome. Chess prodigy Bobby Fischer plays against 50 opponents simultaneously in 1964. By this time, Fischer was already globally recognized for his extraordinary chess skills. Actress Heather Thomas appears in a 1983 photo taken at the peak of her television career. She became known for her role as Jody Banks in the series The Fall Guy, which aired from 1981 to 1986. Bonnie Elizabeth Parker and Clyde Chestnut Barrow, known as Bonnie and Clyde, are pictured in 1933 at the height of their notoriety. The criminal couple gained fame for their bank robbery activities. Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio appear together on their wedding day in 1954. Despite their intense romance, the marriage lasted only 9 months, but the image of that day remains a symbol of America's golden age of celebrity. Marlene Dietrich is lifted by soldiers in New York in 1945 in a celebratory scene shortly after the end of World War II. The image symbolizes her popularity among the troops and her active role in the war effort. Argi Bam is an ancient citadel located in Bam in southeastern Iran. With around 1,500 years of history, its mud brick structure resembles a massive sandcastle sculpted in the desert. Models display various neckline styles popular in the 1950s, a decade known for elegance and femininity in fashion. The cuts ranged from boat neck, sweetheart, off the shoulder, to the classic V-neck, enhancing the silhouette and accentuating the neckline. Muhammad Ali received a $5.5 million payment for a fight in 1978, one of the highest amounts ever paid to a boxer at the time. The sum was for his bout against Leon Spinks, in which Ali reclaimed the heavyweight world title for the third time, an unprecedented achievement. The luxurious Great Hall of the Breakers Mansion in Newport, Rhode Island, is shown in this 1890s image. Designed by architect Richard Morris Hunt, the Breakers symbolize the power and wealth of America's 19th century industrial elite. The New Hampshire Orphans' Home operated on part of the former Daniel Webster Farm in Franklin, United States. Founded in 1871, the orphanage was run by the state and provided shelter, food, and education for children without families or in vulnerable situations. The Statue of Liberty is shown under construction inside the workshop of sculptor Frederic Auguste Bartholdi in Paris in 1882. Once completed, it was shipped in parts and assembled on Liberty Island in New York, where it was inaugurated in 1886. Niagara Falls appears partially frozen in an image taken during the winter of 1926. Even in extreme cold, visitors gathered to witness the natural phenomenon, showcasing the power and beauty of the falls under harsh weather conditions. The telephone tower in Stockholm, Sweden, appears in this historic image taken before the implementation of modern switching networks. This system soon became obsolete with the rise of automatic switching technology. Coin-operated televisions were available at the Greyhound station in Los Angeles during the 1960s. These devices were common in terminals, hospitals, and hotels, offering temporary entertainment in public spaces. A shaving robot is shown in action during a demonstration from the 1990s, highlighting the advances in home robotics of the time. Although limited, these robots paved the way for today's progress in automated personal care. Victorian women pose with extremely long hair in a photo taken in the 1860s. Some of them took part in public shows or fairs as part of groups known as fairy-haired women. During the 1940s, weight loss was promoted mainly through simple diets, regular physical activity, and more straightforward medical advice. The ideal body type favored a slim yet healthy silhouette reflecting the classic beauty standards of the time. A woman poses with a camera during World War II in a classic retro-style image. Dressed in period clothing, she represents the many women who worked as photographers during the war. A model poses wearing a vintage 1950s bullet bra, a distinctive piece of women's fashion from the era. With its pointed and structured shape, the bullet bra was designed to highlight and shape the bust under the tight dresses typical of the post-war period. The dressing room of the Moulin Rouge appears in this 1924 image showing dancers getting ready for the show. The scene reveals the backstage of one of Paris's nightlife icons during the 1920s, in the post-war years of cultural vibrancy. Miles is introduced as an actress from the 1950s, a period known as the Golden Age of Hollywood. Actresses of that era were known for their elegant style, sophisticated hairstyles, and strong on-screen presence. Betty Brosmer was one of the most famous models of the 1950s, known as one of the top calendar girls of the golden age of pin-ups. Known for her striking figure, extremely narrow waist, and elegant posture, she appeared on hundreds of magazine covers, advertisements, and promotional posters. The first known photograph of Queen Victoria with her eldest daughter, Victoria, Princess Royal, was taken in 1844 by photographer Henry Collin. Princess Victoria would later become Empress of Germany, marrying the future Emperor Frederick III. A woman walks through the streets carrying books for rent, acting as a walking library. This unusual practice was a creative way to bring reading to areas where access to books was limited. Lucette Desmoulins, a young, smiling, and elegant woman, is portrayed in 1920 with the typical features of post-World War I fashion and grace. She wears refined simplicity and a short, garçon-style haircut. A game board belonging to Pharaoh Tutankhamun was found in his tomb in the Valley of the Kings, Egypt, over 3,000 years old. This artifact reveals the importance of games in the life and spiritual beliefs of ancient Egypt. A French model is photographed reading a fashion magazine during the 1920s, a period marked by the rise of the flapper style and the modernization of women's clothing. Workers begin construction on Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills of South Dakota in 1927. The project, envisioned by Gutzon Borglum, aimed to carve the faces of 4 U.S. presidents: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln. The Ford Model T, shown in the image, was one of the first mass-produced automobiles in the world. In 1924, its price dropped to about $260 thanks to the assembly line developed by Henry Ford. The Crystal Palace was rebuilt in Sydenham, England in 1855 after being dismantled from its original site in Hyde Park, where it had hosted the Great Exhibition of 1851. A woman curiously examines the new seatbelt installed in her car during the 1950s. Initially met with skepticism, seatbelts later became mandatory in many countries in the following decades. High school students protest against the ban on girls wearing slacks in 1940. At the time, many schools enforced strict dress codes requiring girls to wear skirts or dresses. Parents take their baby ice skating during the 1930s in a scene typical of the time. Ice skating was a popular winter activity in many parts of the world, with families often enjoying outdoor fun together. A man operates a large astronomical telescope, carefully adjusting its gears and levers. Telescopes like this were found in major observatories around the world and played a significant role in the advancement of modern astronomy. The Hot Wheels assembly line in the 1960s shows the manufacturing process of the famous toy cars that became cultural icons. They were launched by Mattel in 1968. Central Park in 1942 offers an iconic view of New York's green space, with pedestrians and families enjoying the open areas, especially meaningful during wartime. A group of people plays chess on the sidewalks of Broadway at the corner of West 49th Street in Midtown Manhattan in August 1986. The scene is a great example of New York City's vibrant and eclectic urban atmosphere, where cultural and social activities often took place right on the streets. Pedestrians look through the window of a New York City restaurant in 1937 as a cook prepares a pot of spaghetti. The scene captures the charm and urban life of the city, where Italian food was becoming increasingly popular. The annual New Year's festivities in Times Square, New York in 1938 show a crowd gathered to ring in the new year. The tradition of celebrating New Year's Eve in the famous Manhattan Square was already in full swing. A military parade in Moscow, Soviet Union in 1940 shows the Soviet armed forces displaying their power and discipline. The image captures soldiers marching in precision in front of key government buildings, along with tanks. A military parade in Moscow, Soviet Union in 1940 shows the Soviet armed forces displaying their power and discipline. The image captures soldiers marching in precision in front of key government buildings, along with tanks. The entrance to Goa Gajah Cave, also known as the Elephant Cave, is located near the city of Ubud in Bali, Indonesia. Carved into the rock and dating back to the 9th century, the facade features a menacing figure with an open mouth, serving as the gateway. A helmet with a built-in communication device used by motorcyclists in the 1960s was a technological innovation of the time. This system allowed riders to communicate with each other while on the move. A police officer takes part in a judging contest in London, likely related to a dog competition, as was common at the time. The event reflects the urban lifestyle and culture of London during the 1930s. Workers take a smoking break at a bridge construction site in 1950. The cigarette break was a common and almost symbolic habit among workers of the time. The Golden Gate Bridge under construction in the 1930s during one of the biggest engineering projects of the time. Started in 1933 and completed in 1937, the bridge connected San Francisco to Marin County and became an icon of architecture and innovation. A thermal facial mask is used as a beauty accessory in the early 1940s. Designed to gently warm the skin, it promised to improve circulation, reduce facial tension, and prepare the face for cosmetic treatments. Contestants take part in a beauty pageant in England in 1967, wearing outfits typical of the era and walking before the audience and judges. The scene represents a classic moment in British popular culture of the time. The image shows a boy being cared for by soldiers, possibly in a wartime or conflict setting. The act of protection reflects human compassion, even in times of great adversity. The installation of a K6 phone booth in London in the 1930s marks a milestone in the UK's telecommunications history. Designed by architect Sir Giles Gilbert Scott, the K6 became an iconic design installed throughout the city. The 1900 Exposition Universelle, also known as the Paris World's Fair, was a grand event marking the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th. Among the attractions were early versions of the subway train, the automobile, and the Lumiere brothers' first cinema.